Salutations Rangers, General Rally 101 back again with some more lore. You know what's cool? Space Marines. You know what's even cooler than a Space Marine? A big Space Marine. But not just any big Space Marine. How about a big Space Marine inside a coffin inside an even bigger robot? Yes indeed, ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about everyone's favorite, Dreadnoughts. So basically, ladies and gents, I was reading about Dreadnoughts and I'm like, yeah, these guys are cool. So in today's video, ladies and gents, super simple, we're just going to be covering 5 of my favorite moments about Dreadnoughts throughout the entirety of Warhammer 40k and the Horus Heresy. Even though all of these come from 40k, but one of them is kind of like half mentioned, don't worry about it. Anyway, without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the big, stompy robots. So our first example of badass dreadnoughtness comes courtesy of the novel Soul Hunter, the first of the Night Lord's trilogy. So, context. First Claw, led by everyone's favorite Night Lord Talos Valkorion, is currently boarding a ship known as the Covenant. Yet during this combat, the Blood Angels unleash a Dreadnought, which causes all sorts of havoc. Because it turns out having a big fuck-off giant robot in a small corridor where you can't move is a recipe for disaster. Armed with a big-ass fist and even bigger melter, the Night Lords are quickly overrun, and it seems like everything is going to shit. That is, however, until the arrival of Night Lord's reinforcements underneath the Exalted. And he brings with him a certain fellow by the name of Malkarion, the War Sage. And the reason why I absolutely adore this scene is because the Blood Angel in question, known as Ragul the Sufferer, he was actually a champion fighting on Terra 10,000 years ago. So too was Malkarion. Malkarion rose to fame as the War Sage because he wrote a lot of good stuff. Various different many treatises about combat that the Night Lords actually look at, and they actually revere to a certain degree. Well, as much as a Night Lord can revere anything, mind you. But basically, he would fight 3 separate champions, and slay all of them before himself being mortally wounded, and then turned into a Dreadnought. One of those fellows was none other than Ragul the Sufferer, and here they are, 10,000 years later, and lo and behold, giant mech fists clatter as they are ready for round 2, taken from Soul Hunter. Talos coughed blood. The bolts that had struck his chestplate and helm left his armor a broken ruin. Although his nerves were deafened to the worst of the pain by combat narcotics pulsing through his veins, he knew spitting blood onto the deck was a bad sign. His gene-enhanced healing was failing to heal whatever the hell was wrong with him. He'd seen Ademar die. It was over in a moment. A blur of motion as the former sergeant rushed the Dreadnought with his blade held high. The war machine turned with unbelievable speed, whirling around on its axis, breathing invisible but searing heat from its multi-melter. Ademhar's armor baked and split within a heartbeat. The joints melted, the empty warplate clattering to melt into sludge onto the deck. Nothing biological remained. Over in a moment. All to save Mercutian and Usas, who were wounded on the other side of the chamber. Talos added his bolter fire to cover them, and taken hits from the Blood Angels for his trouble. Were the Blood Angels suicidal? To fire a melter weapon within a ship? It was a miracle the hull hadn't liquefied yet, and every one of them torn out into the rushing air. Talos gripped on him, feeling his strength waxing again. Good. Not lethal, perhaps. Something was wrong, but it could be dealt with later. The Blood Angels had to be slaughtered, skinned, and crucified for their accursed presence on the Covenant. At first he thought the deck shaking was merely more of atmospheric turbulence. Shells still exploded around his fragile cover, and only when Malkarion strode past, his armored bulk barely fitting within the linking corridors, did Talos realize what was happening. The Dreadnought stalked into the chamber, ignoring the small arms fire from the Blood Angels. Revitalized by the War Sage's presence, First Claw survivors doubled their fire. Asartes, armored in red, died. Mercutian and Sirion went down as well, struck by bolts. Talos felt his newly recovered strength desert him. Back to the wall, he slid down onto the decking, clutching his shattered breastplate. The Dreadnoughts regarded each other in a moment of almost hilarious calm. Kill it! Kill it now!
I already have once.
Malkarion boomed. The Blood Angel's Dreadnought made the same gear-shifting grind of a sound Talos heard from Malkarion. The Night Lord's eyes fell upon the sarcophagus mounted within the War Sage's new body. There stood the image of Malkarion in life, clutching 3 helms. One of those belonged to the Blood Angel's champion, Ragul, the Sufferer.
Even in death, I will avenge myself. You deserve the chance, Ragul.
With power fists crackling, the 2 war machines did what they were resurrected to do. The fight played out in 2 worlds, and until his dying night, Talos was never sure which battle he truly witnessed. In the immediate, painful shaking world of the shallowest senses, the 2 armored behemoths tore at each other with rotating claws and bludgeoning fists. Ceramite ripped in those mauling hands, and shards of armor flew from the combatants like hail on some blizzard-touched death world. Neither of the suspended corpses saw this, and neither felt it. The walls were gold where these warriors dueled. Both men wore the proud armor of their legion. Both men fought for Terra. One to defend it and die for the Imperium. One to conquer it and kill for the same reason. Their blades spun and struck until both were broken. Then it came down to gauntleted fists and the strength to strangle. Talos watched the Dreadnoughts tearing each other to scrap, and saw exactly what the dead men saw. Now, as to why I include this as one of my favorite examples of Dreadnoughts in 40k is purely because of the whole thematic idea of it. 2 warriors, once were brothers, now torn apart by the heresy, their legions sundered, fighting on Terra, dueling each other to death, only to be resurrected 10,000 years later to do it again. Even in death they still serve. Even in death they still fight. For their mortal coils may have perished, but their eternal hatred for one another still survived, and the duel must still be decided. That is absolutely unbelievably epic to me. Honestly, I love it. To me, it is so 40k, but it's also so Dreadnought as well. I mean, you think the grudge match would be over by the time the first duel was over, but no. Even in death, they still hold grudges. It's so Dreadnought, it's so 40k, it's so iconic, and it's such a beautiful moment. Because it's something that can only happen with Dreadnoughts. For truly, not even in death does duty end. But now, on to our next one. The next bit of our story comes from Space Marine Conquest, Apocalypse. Basically, it follows Keldar, a Huskarl of the Imperial Fists, and he was appointed by Gelman to go and protect the cardinal world of Almach. And it's not just him, as there's a joint force of many space marines, sisters of battle, and very ecclesiastical boys. And one of those is indeed the White Scars, led by Subal Khan. Now they're all there to protect this world because the word bearers, read by Mr. Corpharaon himself, want to come in and do a little bit of yonky yonky or something bad. But regardless of what the word bearers want, Almar is home to at least a few schools, so the word bearers are not allowed within a few light year distance. Thus all these space marines come together, and during this we see a very unique instance. We get a White Scar Dreadnought. Now I'll explain why that's very unique and super fucking awesome later. Instead of me waffling on, it'd be a hell of a lot better if I just told her directly. Taken from Space Marine Conquest, Apocalypse. Wake up, Malimar, it's time.
At last.
Malimar rumbled. The Dreadnought's voice was accompanied by a growl of static. He flexed his power claw eagerly as he stepped out of his cell. The deck shivered beneath his grinding tread.
Keep your Talwar shield, little brothers. I will clear a path.
Take your time, old man, Arkik said, as he quickly stepped aside, allowing the Dreadnought to stomp past. Don't burst the gasket. One of the Dreadnought's optic sensors rotated in its housing.
Is that you, Arik? It must be. Only you are so foolish to speak to me so.
And here I thought we were friends, old man. Arik grinned up at the blinking sensor. He knew Malimar could see him. in some fashion. Leave some for us, please. Malimar was silent for a moment. Then,
No promises?
the Dreadnought turned his attentions toward the rest of the squad.
Get out of my way, little brothers.
Then more loudly,
Out of my way, I said.
the Dreadnought shoved his way towards the disembarkation point, forcing the rest of Arik's squad to scramble out of his path. A moment later, the ramp of a gunship opened like a flower of metal and heat, dropping to the deck with a thunderous clang. Malimar stepped down the ramp, ignoring the weapon's fire that danced across his chassis.
Is that all the greeting you can muster, insects?
He growled as he reached the deck.
Don't you know who I am?
Arik laughed despite the shots that glanced off his breastplate. At the top of the ramp, the White Scars returned fire, giving ululating yells as their shots struck home. I don't think they do! Arik shouted. Tell them, grandfather!
I am Malimar of Yurzon.
The Dreadnought roared, its vox cast a sector maximum.
I am the White Wolf of the Lakes. Hear my howl.
His assault cannon circled to life. He pivoted, letting the weapon player cross to hold with a high-pitched whirl. Hundreds of rounds were loose in a matter of seconds, and the rate of fire was such that those assault fighters still berthed in their holds shook on their struts, or collapsed utterly. So immediately this hits all the notes for why I love a Dreadnought. Anytime a Dreadnought refers to like other Space Marines as like little brother or younger brother, I call me a salamander, but immediately I'm like, yes, sold, good, give me more. But aside from the fact that this is perfect, he refers to them as little brothers, there's dialogue between them, there's funny dialogue. You have White Scars being White Scars who are literally getting shot at and are like, hey old man, they don't know who you are, lay that shit down. It's absolutely perfect. Not only as a Dreadnought, but as a White Scar, it's amazing. But now let's talk a bit about the White Scars. This is a super important and awesome detail, because to a lot of people they think the White Scars don't have Dreadnoughts. Now this exactly doesn't come from a wrong idea. The White Scars are all about momentum, they're about moving fast, going hard, living life to the fullest. And to a few of them, the idea of being interned in a Dreadnought is not an immediate honor like it is to other Space Marines, because you can't really feel anymore in a Dreadnought. You know, no wind in your hair and all that jazz. But the White Scars do indeed possess Dreadnoughts, and they're indeed venerated and used as such. There's even a special formation of them that existed during the Heresy. I'm not too sure if it exists now, but it was known as the Guardian of the Moons and Stars, or something like that. But it's always nice to see something that is not exactly debated, but a little uncertain, or like there's a question mark somewhere there. So to see that introduced in a book, not only introduced in a book, but in such a very good moment. Because not only does it show off a Dreadnought being a Dreadnought and being awesome, assault cannons are quality weapons. It also shows the White Scars being White Scars, because he's not just a Dreadnought, he's a White Scars Dreadnought, and you get it right here. That little excerpt gives you so much character to these characters, and it's beautiful. It's amazing, and it's absolutely perfect. Not only for a Dreadnought, but for a White Scar as well. But now, on to our next one. Our next article of Dreadnought goodness comes from the novel Deathwatch 2013. Now this story basically covers the antics of a kill team known as Talon Squad. And there are various different many Space Marines attached to there, including a Lamenter's Dreadnought. None other than Brother Carrion, who for the longest time thought he was the only Lamenter. Or he might still, I don't know if they ever touched upon that, but I imagine with the whole Primaris nonsense happening, someone probably told him that hey, your chapter still exists. But basically there is a bit of an issue going on with gene stealers. Thus they are instructed by an Inquisitor Sigma, don't laugh, it's not funny. They then have to traverse the deadly domains that is a gene stealer lair to find out just what exactly is going on in the world, to either save it or destroy it. And they end up finding something rather unique. But as for Brother Carrion, he shows that a Dreadnought not only has to be badass, but also rather smart. Taken from Deathwatch. The exfiltration point looked like a scene from Goldor's famed typic aftermath at Hades. The circular expanse of the room was awash with blood, littered with the broken bodies of the dead. 4 members of Talon Squad, Zed, Voss, Solarion, and Routh, skidded into the echoing chamber and stopped, their lips forming grim lines behind their visors. They could not see their sixth member at all in this reeking mess. The chamber floor was tacky with cooling crimson. The nearest bodies looked like they had been ripped to pieces. Others near the far walls looked like they had been burned in flames or chewed apart by large rounds. Against one wall, more lay in a great mound. But of Carrion himself, there was no sign. "Such butchery," murmured Solarion, looking at the bodies by his feet. "At least he enjoyed himself in our absence,"
They were a welcome diversion, Ultramarine.
rumbled a voice, basso profundo.
From the boredom of waiting for you.
The hill of corpses against the chamber wall began to shudder and shift. Dead meat slid away. There was the noise of skulls smacking on stone, the slap of a lifeless flesh. Carrion rose awkwardly from beneath the pile and turned his slot-visored glacius plate to face them. "A little hide and seek, old one," said Zed with a grin. Carrion began dragging himself towards the middle of the chamber, and the rest of the kill team could see just how badly damaged he was. His left leg was a mess. His arm had shattered. The pistons and actuators beneath twisted and snagged. His foot made showers of bright yellow sparks as he dragged it along the ground. His right arm was in even more worse state, for almost nothing of the assault cannon remained. All over his chassis, his tank-thick armor was gouged, scored, chipped, and burned in too many places to count. He preempted their next question.
Man-portable missile launchers.
He growled.
The dung-eating cowards fired on me from the shadows, then swarmed me like ants, and they died like ants. Brainwashed men and Xenos bred abominations both.
At this, the other Death Watch operatives took a better look at the dead. There were literally hundreds of them. But finding bodies which had not been pulped beyond recognition by the Lamenter's power fist, or burned to cinders by his flamer, was far from easy. For the most part, Carrion's attackers were, in physical form at least, men like any others. The majority wore miners' overalls and orange thermosuits. Others yet wore the dark uniform and body armor of the Civitas enforcers. But there were others too, and these last were not so much like men. They were taller, boasted larger frames, and those frames were twisted with Xenos corruption. Some had extra limbs, others had sharp triangle teeth peeking out from within their slack mouths. To a Space Marine's eyes, even the relative darkness of the chamber could not hide the unnatural curling of their skin. These were the tainted byblows of the gene-stealer infection, and Carrion had left none here alive. "Quite the body count," said Voss.
Would that the version had lasted longer.
Returned Carrion.
Is there anything left to kill down there?
"Gene stealers," said Voss. "Leaderless now, thanks to Scholar. But they'll be coming. You may yet have more killing to do."
That will be some compensation,
said Charon.
I tried calling in the Storm Ravens via the link when the chrono dropped to 5 minutes. I wondered why there was no response.
"Why did you hide under these corpses?" asked Zed. Carrion snorted diversely.
Use your head, little raven. I was left with only my power fist. Would you have me stand here in the middle of the chamber where our enemies could fire missiles on me from a safe distance? I had hoped to ambush more of them as they walked along their dead. But it seems there were no others to come. Or perhaps they did not want to die.
After a pause, he asked,
Is that the primary objective? That sickly woman? She looks all but dead herself.
Again, I absolutely love this scene, because it shows the true raw power of a dreadnought. Generally speaking, when we have things like tanks or other dreadnoughts, we think, oh no, someone has a missile launcher, alright, it's game over, you get one shot, c'est la vie. I blame that to Hollywood and what it did with plate armor. But that's not the case. Just because you have the ability to kill something, doesn't mean you will kill it. And here with Carrion, he is an absolute monster. Sure, he's pretty banged up beyond all recognition, but he's still a dreadnought and he's still there. The only reason why he was hiding was because, well, he didn't have any ranged weapons left. He only had a fist and he couldn't move well. So wait in ambush and leap out and just bash someone over the head. But again, this image of a dreadnought, this living, immortal, undead monstrosity, ageless warrior, climbing out of a mountain of corpses only to curse them for being so cowardly as to not fight him one-on-one. There is something about that is so unbelievably epic. And again, it's something that only a dreadnought can do. Not only that, but he's so calm about the whole situation. Just seeing a dreadnought surrounded by corpses, it's perfect. Again, the little interchanges between the dreadnought as well as his partners there, it's so quality. Absolutely great. 12 out of 12, would highly recommend. But now, ladies and gents, on to our next excerpt. Now the next one is a rather famous example, and I imagine a few of you might know of it. Well, this comes from the book Apocalypse, and it's the story of the Anchorite. Now, for the few of you who may not know who the Anchorite is, allow me to elaborate. During the betrayal of Calth, which happened during the Horus Heresy, the Word-Bearers as well as the Ultramarines were meeting on the Ultramarine world of Calth. They were supposed to deploy to destroy a supposed Orc war. However, it was at that point that the Word-Bearers would launch a surprise attack on the Ultramarines, devastating them. In some estimates, they wiped out nearly as much as half the Legion that was present there. It was a pretty bad day to be an Ultramarine. However, a combination of the Ultramarines being absolutely badass and the Word-Bearers being way too much focused on killing random motherfuckers meant that the Ultramarines could bounce back from this. Well, I say bounce back, they turned a complete and utter defeat into a Pyrrhic victory, which, bittersweet moment. But basically during this fight, one Word-Bearer on the world of Calth would come to sort of an epiphany. He would kinda understand that, hey, what they're doing, pretty bad. So he would present himself before Guilliman himself, and he'd be like, hey, I surrender. Guilliman, rather surprising everyone, myself included, was like, okay, cool. Thus he was placed inside a prison cell. Now during this time he racked himself with a hell of a lot of guilt. So much so that he tried to self-delete, which would return in him being placed in a dreadnought. But during this time he would spend himself in a sort of fateful meditation. He would swear off violence altogether, and he would continue to write more and more about the glory of the Emperor, which would actually go on to be the founding basis for the Ecclesiarchy, believe it or not. Eventually, however, he would be moved to another planet, and it was at this point that the Word-Bearers would discover of him. Thus, they would make an all-out attempt to either rescue him, bring him back, join him, or something, whatever. They wanted him, yeah? And during this time, the Imperial Defenders are there, and the Anchorite is like, hey, how about you just leave and let me die? And the Imperial Fist Guardian was like, no, this is my duty, and my duty is to protect you, so I will. And the Anchorite is left with his thoughts. The Word-Bearers then come calling home, and it is a hell of a fight. But the Imperials, despite their bravery, are losing because demons, lots of demons, whole hell of a bunch of demons. It is at that point that the Anchorite decides, enough is enough, and he finally steps forward. And we get to see what 10,000 years worth of prayer does to a motherfucker. Taken from Apocalypse. A towering grey shape stomped through the smoke, shoving aside the burning immolator as it went. Fighting ceased as demons and Word-Bearers alike drew back before the newcomer. The dreadnought stopped, red gaze fixed on Anatim.
You came here for me.
Amatinum stared, unable to take his eyes away from the ancient monster standing before him. The dreadnought spread his arms, a gesture of invitation and challenge.
Well, here I am. Come out then, sons of Logar, or has your courage deserted you in the centuries since I wore the colors of the Legion?
The dreadnought turned, studying the demons that crept towards him.
Or perhaps you prefer to let these abominations wage war on your behalf? Is that what will become in my absence?
The dreadnought turned, surveying the demonic ranks arrayed before him. Then, he swept a talon out and spat a single, thunderous word. A word that Amatinum had not heard in centuries. A word from lost cultures. A word he had forgotten the meaning of, but which sent a spike of pain through him. He wasn't the only one hurt. The Neverborn screamed. As one they screamed. A strange light swirled, seeming to rise from the Dreadnought's battered chassis, and Amartinem was forced to turn away. The light spread, and for a moment, Amartinem thought he glimpsed great wings. Not 2, not 4, but 6, or a dozen more, rising from the Dreadnought's back. And a face, wise and pitiless in its wisdom, superimposed over the bare helm of the ancient war machine.
This place is not for you,
The Dreadnought said. Around him, demons came apart, scattering like ash on the breeze. The effect spread like a contagion through their ranks, claiming them even as they turned to run, to flee. Amartinem waved Apis and the others back. Perhaps the ancient warrior was mad. Who wouldn't be? Imprisoned for millennia on a world such as this? I have more wisdom than you know, brother. Come, join us. Rejoin your legion, and you shall have it as well. The wisdom of clarity, of truth revealed. The anchorite stopped.
And is this why you came, boy? To dig me from my tomb and tell me fanciful stories?
Amartinem cleared his throat. I came because the gods showed me your torment, and I knew that I could not leave you to rot in this place. Move aside, brother, and we will finish the last task and depart.
Where will we go then? Not cautious, for it is gone. Not terror. Where then, boy?
Annoyed, Amartinem looked directly into the Dreadnought's optical sensors. Sicarius, brother, where the Dark Council awaits to welcome you. Then there was a sharp, staccato sound. It echoed in the quiet. Amartinem realized that the Dreadnought was laughing.
And who is on this council? That Chuckle Copheron? Or that Ada Erebus? Who guided your steps, boy?
Stop calling me boy, nameless one. I am Amitan Urnabas Lash, and I am a veteran of the Long War no less than yourself.
Amartinem.
The Dreadnought leaned forward.
I know you now. One of Copheron's curse. You like to burn books, I recall.
Another staccato laugh.
Books aren't known for fighting back, are they?
Amartinem bared his teeth. Anger thrummed through him. I did not come here to be mocked, old one. Stand aside, and I will forgive your loose tongue. He swept out his axe rake for emphasis. We shall slaughter your captors before we depart for happier fields than this.
Stand aside? No. I've done that enough for one lifetime. Let's decide Istavan and Kelth. But not here, boy. Not now.
The great machine whirled, quicker than Amartinem believed was possible. The blow caught him in the chest and he was hurled back against a broken plinth. As he sagged, his battleplate screaming damage warnings in his ear, he saw Appius and the others open up on the Dreadnought. Bolters roared, but the anchorite ignored them. He reached out and caught Antonym by the shoulder plate.
What is a man to do when he has lost his faith? I felt as if I were in the desert, with no one to guide me. The gods spat in my face and whispered false promises. They showed me oases, but there was no water in them. Only blood.
The anchorite lifted him, claws tightening.
And then I saw the light. It stretched across the dark skies and drew me on. And I followed. Through the sands I stumbled until I beheld a city on a hill of gold, as great as a mountain and shining like a caged sun. And in that city, the truth, not the falsehoods you peddled as such, but the real thing, the truth that we turned from, unable to bear its mighty light.
There is only one truth, Amartnam said. It is older than any city, older than man itself.
And that is the lie. The oldest lie.
For those who are wondering, yes, this is indeed the same book that the White Scars were in. Honestly, 2 epic Dreadnought moments for the price of 1. Quality book. I know some people complained it was more of a word-bearer themed book, but I mean, come on, you got the anchorite in it. I mean, yeah, of course it's gonna have a lot of word-bearers in it. But this scene is amazing to me, because the word-bearers are one of those legions that is really misunderstood. You know, they get memed on a lot, and hell, I'm guilty of that myself. But it's one of those things where the idea of the word bearers, what they stand for, and the concept of faith in 40k as a satirical element can be used to tell very good stories. Faith is one of those things where people are often very wary of touching it. It's either the case of, you know, you don't touch it, or you have no care at all to touch it and do whatever the hell you want. And honestly, I believe that's such a shame. Yes, you should always respect faith, but, you know, yes, of course, you should respect faith, but personally I hold the belief that if you can't question your faith, it's not real faith. Because to have faith means to believe in something that should not happen. Uncertainty and faith are inexorably interlinked with one another. So to see these two oppositions of faith, those who seek true faith as they determine it, tangible faith, which is an oxymoron in of itself, the word bearers, meet a true word bearer in any sense of the word. One who acknowledges the truth of it, the fact that the Horus Heresy was what it was. It was a failing of the word bearers, not because they failed to serve the Emperor, but because they failed themselves. They never truly understood faith, and to see the culmination of a man who has accepted his faith, who's gone through his own trials and tribulations, his own hells, finally accept that this is what the reality is, and then to step forward and to have such power that he can banish demons, it's a very beautiful example, and I feel that's the only way to describe a scene like this. It's just beautiful. You know, there's a good chance I could be reading into it too much. You know, I'm a man of faith myself, and probably I'm interposing a bit much of what I want onto this a little bit, but I don't think that there's anything I'm saying that completely changes the story or makes it weird. But regardless of what they meant for it to represent, the fact of the matter is having a dreadnought walk forward and be like, hey, demon, ligma, and just perish. It's just, it's so good, man. I am such a slut for when it comes to words of power. Being able to physically fight someone with just your voice is such an epic bit of world building, I guess you could say. It's not a trope, I don't know what you call it, but I love it so much. And to see the anchor right there finally come to terms with everything and accept that this is who he is now. This eternal warrior angel, this archangel of the Emperor, for lack of a better word, and just to have him throw hands, it's perfect. It's wonderful. I'm just gonna be rambling if I carry on. I know that these explanations have been super short, but I'm just gonna end up rambling about how fucking cool it is, bro. I love Dreadnoughts so much. But ladies and gentlemen, what could be topping the anchorite, I hear you asking? And that is none other than number 1, my absolute favorite Dreadnought in all of Warhammer 40k, and my favorite moment of a Dreadnought in this entire beautiful setting. So now, if you guys have been on the channel for a while, you probably know what I'm talking about, because I've actually talked about my favorite Dreadnought before, and what actually ended up inspiring this video was someone actually, you know, taking a look at my work and actually posting it on Instagram, which is pretty cool to see. And I'm like, That was a good video because I really enjoyed making that video. I'm like, you know what? I got free will. I'ma do it again, baby. So has this video just been a massive excuse for me to voice act Dreadnoughts? You bet your sweet brown Betty ass it has, baby boy. But hey, it's goddamn good. And I saved the best for last. That being none other than Castle the Damned, Castle the Mad, Castle. I fucking love this Dreadnought so much. I love this Dreadnought so much. I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. My favorite fucking Dreadnought. So the story of Castle comes from the Shield of Baal series, particularly Deathstorm, which is a novella. And it stars Captain Carlin, the Shield of Baal. The Nids are on the rampage, but he has to go to the world of Asphodax. The world cannot be saved, but he has to destroy as much as he can to prevent the Nids from getting any good stuff. And he's there with the Flesh Terrors, but that is their primary mission, it's not their only mission. Brother Corbulo, head of the Sanguinary Priests, is a bit like, hey, there's something funny going on with the blood of the ruling dynasty. Grab the governor or at least a drop of their blood, and it could help us cure the Black Rage. How exactly that's supposed to work? Don't fucking ask me, I ain't no doctor. But basically, they go on to do that. And it turns out that what's particular about this chap's blood is that it is actually kinda gene-stealer-ish. And there is something called the Spawn of Cryptus, a broodlord. Apparently this gene-stealer has a familial vengeance vendetta against the governor because his parents went off-world once. The book does a much better job of explaining it. It actually is pretty cool. Yet while they're escaping the Tyranids, they end up into the plaza. And they're ambushed by a big old bunch of Nids. It's at that point that the 11th Company of the Blood Angels is deployed. That being the Death Company. And along with the Death Company is none other than a certain fellow by the name of Castle. Ooh, I'm going to enjoy this one. Taken from Shield of Baal, Deathstorm. The Carnifex continued on, lumbering through the smoke of the warriors passing. Its biocannon swung about, vomiting more strangling thorns across the plaza, and its scything talons swung out in deadly arcs, sending Death Company berserkers crashing to the ground, in clouds of blood and entrails. Their power armor cracked open, and their torment ended. It spat plasma, incinerating anything that dared to say its progress. And when none of those weapons sufficed, it simply crashed through the opposition. Be it a living warrior or an unfeeling statue, it was unstoppable, and it was heading right for Carlin and the others. As one, the Terminators fired. The Carnifex shrugged off the explosive shells and continued to bowl forwards. It would not stop. Carlin knew until it was dead, or until something even bigger decided to get in its way. Nevertheless, he continued to fire, his targeting array trying to find some weak point in its carapace. The ground shook beneath his feet as the Carnifex closed in. Joseph readied himself to meet it, his face split by a wide, feral grin. Carlin could smell the insipid bloodlust in the other Blood Angel's sweat, and see it building in his eyes. He hesitated, wondering if he should order the sergeant to step back. Would that stop him? Would he listen? Or was he already too far gone? Before the question could be answered, something black smashed into the charging Carnifex from the side and sent it slowing through a column. The Carnifex rolled to its feet in a cloud of dust, but its attacker was on it before it could move. Metal talons, each as long as a sword, flashed out, carving bloody tracks in the Carnifex's flesh. The alien reared back, screaming in rage. Its cry was answered by its opponent.
Come, traitor! Come to Castle! Come and fight! Come and die! But come all the same!
The box speakers in the Dreadnought's hull crackled.
Come and meet thy doomed dogs of abomination! Come and feel the angel's wrath! Curs of Angron! Come screaming, or come in silence! But come so that Castle might lay thy hearts at Sanguinius' feet! The walls of the palace stand! The Eternity Gate remains barred, and Castle will break and I cook its spines across his knee.
The Dreadnought, hull painted black and daubed in red, set itself as the Carnifex charged towards it. The talons mounted on the ends of the piston-like arms rotated and flexed. Then one rose, revealing a Stormbolter mounted beneath the claw. The Stormbolter spat, and the Carnifex shuddered, as its already abused flesh received a new punishment. It crashed into the Dreadnought and drove it back into a statue. The Dreadnought shrugged off the blow and rammed itself into the Carnifex's gut, lifting the beast into the air momentarily before smashing it down onto the ground. By the wings of the angel, it's Castle. Alpheus breathed as he watched the battle unfold before them. Carly did not ask him how he recognized the Dreadnought, but there was only one Castle. Castle the Chained, Castle the Mad, Castle the Damned. Whatever name he was known by, he had been one of the greatest warriors ever produced by the Blood Angels, even before he had been interred into a Dreadnought sarcophagus, to rise and fight again after his death on some far-flung battlefield. He was also a warning, a testament to the dark truth that even the dead were not truly safe from the curse which afflicted the sons of Sanguinius. For almost 3 centuries after his death, Castle had served the Blood Angels from the War Machine sarcophagus, until that final fateful day at Lofang. In the early hours of the battle, his mind had shattered. Though no one could say why, some swore that it was the shadows of the wings of the Sanguinary Guard falling on him as they passed overhead. Carling suspected that there was more to it than that. Whatever the reason, however, Castle now belonged to the Death Company and was far too dangerous to be unleashed without cause. He could barely tell friend from foe, and he was, in his own way, as monstrous as the tyrannic creature he was now fighting. The Damned One, Zachriel murmured as he watched the battle. He looked at Carlin. Truly, our mission must be important if Commander Dante has unleashed him to aid us, Captain. Were you ever in any doubt? Carlin said, watching as the Black Hole Dreadnought crashed into the Carnifex again. The 2 maddened beasts, one metal, one flesh, came together like rival bovids. The stones of the plaza were crushed and churned to rubble as they strove against one another.
Oh, traitor! Strive and strain all you wish. You will never conquer Castle. While Castle stands before the gates of Holy Terror, none shall pass. Shriek, demon! Scream out your prayers to the gods of wrong angels and shattered skies. Summon them! They shall not defeat Castle. It cannot be done.
Castle's emotionless, rasping monotone echoed across the plaza, drowning out the shrieks of the Carnifex. The Carnifex ripped at the Dreadnought with its huge claws, scoring the ancient armor, but failing to pierce it. Castle slashed at the beast with its own talons. The Xenos and Dreadnought reeled across the plaza, brawling through the ruins. The Carnifex howled out bestial challenges as Castle roared out gibberish in reply. Suddenly, the ceramite plate buckled, and one of the Carnifex's claws lanced down into the nest of grav plates and fiber bundles that made up the Dreadnought's innards. The claw crashed down through the war machine and on into the ground, pinning Castle in place.
Pinned? Inconceivable! Castle shall not stand for this puppet of false gods! Release me, so that I might wipe thy stain from the earth!
Castle rumbled. In reply, the Carnifex opened its maw wide. A greasy ball of plasma began to form between its jaws.
Sorcery? You dare? Suffer not the witch to live, so says Castle!
One heavy mechanical claw closed around the Carnifex's throat, holding it in place. The beast, as if understanding what Castle had planned, began to struggle, but to no avail. As surely as it had the Dreadnought pinned, Castle had it held fast, before the monster could release the burst of bile it had prepared. The Dreadnought brought up its wrist-mounted meltagun and shoved the barrel between the creature's jaws. With a dull hiss, the back of the beast's skull vanished in a cloud of superheated gas. The Carnifex toppled sideways, freeing Castle in the process. The war machine shoved himself upright. His chassis rotated as the opted augers mounted in the hull scanned the plaza for more enemies.
Listen, traitors. Hear Castle's words. I still stand. The Emperor's hand is upon my shoulder. I am Death Incarnate.
The words echoed out over the area, but no new challenges appeared. Then with a grinding of unseen gears and a whine of servos, Castle the Dam stalked towards the palace, in search of new foes to slay. In the aftermath of the Carnifex's death, silence descended on the plaza. The gore-splatter survivors of the Death Company had cleared the plaza and entered the rooms of the palace, followed by Castle. Colin could hear the sounds of battle echoing from the gaping doors of the palace, and he knew that some of the Gene Stealers at least had not made a clean escape. Honestly, I love Castle, not just because of how he speaks, he's so big and verbose, but also his story. Blood Angels are terribly tragic. Castle knows he's mad, he knows everything that's going on, he's cognizant, but despite that he still serves, because he is a hero of the Blood Angels. And I don't know, I really love the character. I have a very big soft spot for him and I don't know why. It's also really bittersweet, because he sadly does die at the end of the book, but he saves the captain. And I guess this is the thing with like all Blood Angels who have, the Black Rage. But seeing the last few moments of Castle are something that just really touched me. And I just want to read this real quick for y'all. His first blow stunned it. His second split its scarred skull. His third and fourth opened that split further and mangled the throbbing organ within. His fifth and sixth shattered its jaw and crushed its staring eyes. His seventh nearly tore its head from its neck. He smashed the hammer of Baal down again and again, until he could no longer lift the relic weapon without trembling from the effort. Then, the rage fading, he used his hammer to level the corpse off Cassa's inert form. "Brother, do you function?" he demanded, sinking down beside the great war machine. "Cassor! Cassor!" Gears whined and servos grated as the hull shifted. Optic sensors flickered and swiveled blindly. Garland froze as Castle's claw rose. The tip of the talons brushed against the crimson teardrop set into the center of his chestplate. "I swore to serve in life or death, but I feel his hand upon me. I cannot move. My armor is breached. I hear his wings, brother. I see." Castle's rumble slurred into silence, without revealing what he had seen. The lights on his hull blinked and faded. Colin laid his hand on the shattered hull. The rage had drained from him with his final blow, and he could feel his strength ebbing. Honestly, I could quote basically everything Castle says from the book, but I wanted to end with that because we talked a lot about how awesome and epic Dreadnoughts are, but I really want to finish this off by reminding people what Dreadnoughts really are. They're denial of peace. Jokes aside, in 40k, death truly is a blessing in most cases. Dreadnoughts, however, they deny a Space Marine that death, to continue to serve on well past he should have been laid to rest. Yet, Space Marines don't see it as evil. They don't see it as a denial. They don't see it as the living hell that we know it to be. They see it as a gift, for even in death, duty does not end. To serve in both life and unlife is the duty of an angel of the Emperor. It's one of those things where, yes, Dreadnoughts are epic, yes, Dreadnoughts are awesome, but never forget that a dreadnought is a living hell. It is the denial of death to further fight. These dreadnoughts are old heroes who are forced to suffer, yet they do it with a smile on their face and happiness in their heart. I love dreadnoughts, not only because they're fucking awesome, but also what they represent. Eternal duty, unforgiving duty, because for your little brothers, what wouldn't you do? Truly a very bittersweet moment. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that's why I love Dreadnoughts. Thank you all so very much for watching. I'd love and appreciate each and one of you. Let me know. What do you think about Dreadnoughts? I know we all love them, but why do you love them? Love to hear your thoughts down below. But even more massive thank you to my awesome members and Patreons. Shout out to my Lieutenant tier members, Mr. Eddie V3 and Miss Majora of the Void. Shout out to my Sergeant tier members, Mr. Damiak, Mr. Andy McGee, Mr. Bowen, Mr. Sean IRL7, Mr. Matthew Merrill, Mr. Sergeant Cossack, 68W173D, and Mr. That Guy. Shout out to my corporate tier members, Mr. Tremail the Math Kitty, Lord Rosarius, Tech Priest Toaster, Mr. Bowen, Shauna Smithers, The Gentle Salamander, The Wench of Warhammer, Major Doshinect, Edward King, and Mr. Overanalyze This. And finally, but absolutely not least, shout out to my private tier members, Mr. Thomas Moslons, Mr. Ivan_SBW, Mr. Monkey Man, Mr. Michael Aeda, Mr. Diego Castro, Mr. Fortis Unum, Mr. CMD Nay, Mr. Eric Massaro, Mr. Dom Marik, Mr. Ken_Sakura333, Mr. Adrian Von Furen, Mr. Morally Bankrupt, Mr. Matthew Peter, Mr. Joshly 1320, Mr. Adrex X1, Mr. Ethan Elam U71, Mr. Kiri Khan, Mr. Malpace-XB1XE, and Mr. Robert Makorovich. Thank you. I love you, and I appreciate each and every one of you. And thank you to all of you who so dedicatedly watch these videos. It hasn't been easy these last few months. Views are really down, so the motivation to make something of utmost quality is definitely lessening. But I made these videos because I love them and because you love them. So here's me talking about something that I really love. But ladies and gentlemen, I have been the General Bradley 101. You have been beautiful, awesome, and amazing people. Thank you so very much for watching. Y'all make sure to stay loyal out there, boys and girls. And I will catch y'all next time. Dismiss Rangers. I hope this video does well. I really fucking killed my voice for it.